Hi YouTube, I very rarely end up sculpting cute characters, but this guy's really cute. He's from the 1980s film Flight of the Navigator. He's like a little hanging alien. So I start off here by just using aluminium wire. This is 2mm aluminium wire, and I just twist it around just to create this armature. This is going to be the inside of the sculpture and it just helps to strengthen it. For the second step, I just use scrunched up kitchen foil just to create this overall kind of mass for his body shape. Then I'll sculpt on top of this using Milliput. So Milliput is a two-part putty. You mix the two parts together in equal amounts and it starts to set. It sets rock hard in about 4 hours. You don't have to cook it in an oven or anything like that. It just dries at room temperature. So here you can see I started using the Milliput just to make his overall body shape. I've also done the top part of his head and I've left 2 hollow spaces where his eyes are going to go. I've added lots of wrinkles and things to his muzzle. That's starting to take shape. And I've also started working on his kind of third hand that he has on the back end of him that he uses just for like clinging to like a stick or something. You can see I've got him hanging on a wire just while he dries. Next I just rolled 2 balls of Milliput for his eyes and let them dry. After they're dried I pressed them into some soft Milliput just in those hollow bits and that's set them in place, and I've put a little ridge around them as well for now. I've also done his lower jaw and his tongue. Next I used the Milliput to form his eyelids and I've also used it to make his thumbs. The hollow bits on the ends of his thumbs will be refined later. Next I added his long ears and I've textured those in to fit them onto his head. There are also these couple of extra bits on the front part of his head which are like, they look almost like little mini ears or something, or they could be kind of antennae or sensors or something like that, but they're a nice little detail. Also on his fingers I've added those, and then I've put the kind of little suction cup looking things on the end of each one, and again that's a nice little detail. Next I made this base for him, which turned out to be a bit trickier than I first imagined. So I had to cut off the branch and screw it in at right angles, just to give him something to hang on. Then because of how heavy he was, I had to actually screw him onto the actual branch. And you can see I've used Milliput there to kind of cover up the screws and things. Extra bit in there, and then on the base I've textured that in so it all looks a bit like moss, and I'll paint that up later. On the bottom part of the base I've had to add a weight, so this is just a 0.5 kilogram weight screwed in place, and that just means that it acts as a counterbalance, otherwise he would fall over. For the first paint stages I just painted the moss like a very dark green colour. The actual branch I could have left it how it was, but I decided to paint it like a flat dark brown colour initially. For the first painting stages on PUCKMARIN, I just painted in this flat flesh colour. So this is just a mix of white, yellow ochre and a tiny bit of cadmium red. And that's all mixed together, it gives you this nice flesh colour. I'm using System 3 acrylic paints to do all of the paintwork. So PUCKMARIN's original flesh colour was a little bit too bright and garish. So what I've done is just added a couple of colour washes. The first one was grey, and I've just basically just washed it over the whole of him, and it's gone into all of those kind of deep areas. It's just made the overall flesh colour just look a lot more realistic. Then I've gone in with more of a sort of maroon kind of colour wash, and that I've done into all the tips of his fingers and on his tongue. Next I did all the little details that make everything pop a little bit. So if you look, I've done dry brushing over basically all of him. That was done with a really pale flesh colour, so same mix as before, just with a lot more white added. You can see this brings out all of the edges and all of the high points, just using dry brush. I've also dry brushed the branch, so that brings out all the textures on the wood as well. And I've done his eyes, painted his eyes. They're just with kind of nice flat white colour to start with, then green circles for his eyes, and then black for the pupils and black edging as well. That really kind of crisps those up and makes his eyes really pop out. Okay, let me show you some close-ups of the wood texture, because I mean, like I say, I could have left it just as the actual wood, but do you remember I painted all the branch like really dark brown to start with, and then by using dry brushing with this much lighter brown, you dry brush it and it brings back all of the texture of the wood. So it still ends up looking like wood, but everything has been painted. And I much prefer doing this because then when you look at the whole model, you know that you've painted absolutely every part of it. Even like the ends of the wood here, I painted with this kind of cream colour, and that matches the sort of original, but looks a little bit brighter. On the moss, which if you remember I just painted a very dark green to start with, I've just gone in with a much brighter, more yellow coloured green, and I've just dry brushed that over the top. This again brings out all the texture and just makes it look a lot more like it's real moss, certainly from a distance anyway. So at this stage I was really pleased with him, and especially pleased with how cute he was looking. There was just one more finishing touch that I wanted to do to him. At first glance it might not look like I've done anything at this stage, but what I've done is I've added some PVA glue along the top of his head, and then I've just used some tweezers just to tweezer a whole load of little bits of cotton wool into the PVA glue. I've let that dry and it just gives him this soft fluffy kind of look all the way along the top of his head. It probably doesn't show up as well as it should do on the screen, but in real life it really does add to his cuteness. Okay, thanks to Milliput for kindly sponsoring this channel. Check out my other videos if you have found this one useful, and if you want to see any other weird creatures that I've made in the past. Hit subscribe to see any creatures that I make in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.